Hello, and welcome to the lesson on constructed responses and the RACER strategy. Before we actually take a look at the constructed responses, let's talk a little bit about the Keystone Literature Assessment. For the standardized tests under Common Core, students must show that they are good readers. This is key to proving what they have learned after 10 years in school. On tests such as the Keystone Literature Assessment, one way to show what they have learned is through reading and responding to a passage via both multiple choice questions and constructed response questions. Please take note, it's key to remember that when these tests refer to literature, we're not talking about the traditional content such as Twain, Shakespeare, or Poe. Literature for these tests refers to any type of writing that a student may be expected to read. This includes texts, articles, maybe newspapers, magazines, technical documents, maybe maps, directions, might even include an excerpt from a video game. Anywhere where you might encounter reading, they want you to be able to read it and answer questions about it. A constructed response is a type of open-ended essay question that asks the student to demonstrate two lower-level skills in Bloom's taxonomy, remembering and understanding. Sometimes the answer asks students to analyze as well, but this is usually a very basic analysis without application or evaluation. The constructed response answer must be provided using information that can be found in the given text or other literature devices, maps, pictures, graphic organizers, etc. The constructed response is not meant to demonstrate opinion, but to show an ability to extract information and use this as a basis for forming a complete answer. Here is the scoring guideline for the Literature Keystone. I'm not going to go over the entire thing, but if you'd like to pause it and take a look at it, you're more than welcome to. What I do want you to notice is that the scoring guide has 0, 1, 2, or 3 points per constructed response. And while that may not seem like a lot, the constructed responses are weighed pretty heavily. So it's really important that students do as well as they can on the constructed responses because they can make a difference between being proficient and being basic on the Keystones. So let's take a look at RACERs. If a student is able to restate a question, provide an answer using evidence cited from the text given, and then explain how that evidence does, in fact, support the answer, they will probably score well on the constructed response portion of the assessment. But that's an awful lot of stuff to remember. So how can we remember all of this? Well, work with your teachers. We have all sorts of bags of tricks. We are smarties. In this case, the mnemonic RACERs can be a tool that you can learn and take with you on exam day. What does RACER stand for? RACER stands for reword or restate the question, answer all parts of the question, cite evidence from the text, explain how the evidence supports your answer, repeat the steps, and summarize your answer briefly. In this case, we've shown the different steps, and we've also color-coded them to help give you some clues along the way to recognizing the different parts of the constructed response answers. So let's take a look at the first part, reword the question. Reword the question means that the student should restate the question and make it into a statement as a part of the answer they are providing. Here's an example. If you were to be asked what color is the sky, you would not simply answer blue. Instead, the correct answer would be the complete sentence, the color of the sky is blue. Answer all parts of the question. In order to answer the question, students need to understand what they are being asked and then make sure they provide the answer to that specific question. The answer, as in the previous example, may come in the first sentence as they reword the question into a statement. But in a constructed response answer, students need to keep going and show how or why they arrived at their answer. It's important to remember that often a constructed response question is looking for the student to show an understanding of a term in order to answer the question. So they will need to answer all parts of the question. So here's an example of a tougher question. It says, how is pollution contributing to the decrease in natural habitats for seabirds? In this answer, we assume that the student has just read an article about pollution and habitats in seabirds. In this answer, the student needs to show that they understand a few different things. First, what type of pollution is the article discussing? Second, what are the natural habitats of these seabirds? And third, how does the pollution act to cause a decrease in these habitats? All parts of the question need to be answered in order to get a full credit on your response. The next step is cite. Cite the evidence. Most constructive responses will require students to support their answers with details from the reading passage. This is best done with a citation, which is a direct quotation from the passage. Notice the citation is green, as in green means go, so go get it from the passage and bring it back. Many students want to give their own experiences or opinions instead of giving a citation. Do not do this. This will lose points. If you actually talk about your own experience or your own opinions, the scorers for the Keystones will consider that information as irrelevant, and they may even take points off of your score. So just stick to what you're given in the passages. After you've found your citation, you're going to explain the evidence. In addition to the evidence cited from the text, you need to supply reasoning for why you think your answer is correct and how that evidence, those citations, how that evidence you've chosen supports your answer. Students will often just pick a quote but not explain it or relate it to their answer. Test graders really frown upon this. Make sure that if you're choosing a quote, you're able to back it up by explaining exactly how it supports your answer. After you've explained the evidence, you need to go back and repeat all of these steps all over again. This will show that you truly have a handle on the question and the text material, and you're going to need to repeat these steps all over again to show this. So repeat your restatement with the second answer, find a second quote from the passage that proves your point, and explain how this quote also supports your answer. After you have repeated the steps again, you want to summarize. This last step needs to be brief, okay? Take a look at your response and make sure it is clear that you have shown that you understand the question and the passage. One warning, though, is that the summary is not a place to write about your own efforts. Do not tell your readers that you did your job. For example, do not summarize by saying, I have answered the question and given 2 quotes. The scorers don't like this. If you've done a good job answering the question, then what you did in your writing should already be evident. Let's look at an example. Describe the main character from the passage. We don't need to read the passage to see whether or not the constructive response has all of the necessary parts. The student response here is, the main character from the passage is an angry person because the narrator says she threw the phone into the wall. When someone is angry, they usually release their frustration by damaging things around them, and that is exactly what the main character did with her phone. The main character is also a very impatient person. At the point in the story when she was told she would need to wait her turn, she turned to her best friend and whined about the super long wait. In reality, she only had to wait 5 minutes, which is not a long wait, but her response shows that she's very little patience with these types of situations. Overall, the character is shown by the author to be an angry and impatient person whose acts seem to be based on temper and immaturity. So let's look at this piece by piece. We're going to check out the first paragraph for a minute. In blue, we have the main character from the passage is. This is our restatement. It said, describe the main character. Super simple. We're looking for adjectives here. The main character from the passage is. Answering the question is the end of that clause. The main character from the passage is an angry person. The citation comes next. The narrator says she threw the phone into the wall. Notice you have 3 parts of the racer strategy all within the very first sentence. We have our restatement, the main character from the passage is, our answer, an angry person, because, the citation, the narrator says she threw the phone into the wall. Oops. One thing to note, and this is really a key thing to remember, that the citations are the parts that most students skip. If you do not use evidence from the passage, you will not earn a proficient score on the passage. A lot of students want to just answer the question without finding citations, without explaining how those citations back up your answer. This is really what they are looking for you to be able to do. If you don't use the citations, you're not going to pass the Keystone constructed response part. The next part is explaining your evidence, and you can see from this first paragraph, it says when someone is angry, they usually release their frustration by damaging things around them, and that is exactly what the main character did with her phone. So here you can see color coordinated all the different parts of the constructed response. The race strategy is here. Now, to bring it into racer, we have to repeat. Take a minute to see if you can recognize the first 4 steps being repeated in paragraph 2. Were you able to find these? The main character is, here's your restatement, also a very impatient person. There's a second answer. When you're asked to describe something, you want to give more than just one adjective or one piece of description. You always want to use at least 2, 3 or more if possible, but always give at least 2. So we have angry, we have impatient for our answers. We have a second quote. At the point in the story when she was told she would need to wait her turn, she turned to her best friend and whined about the super long wait. Here I'd like to make sure that everybody knows how to use a citation or a direct quote. Always, always, always put these quotes within quotation marks. The people who are reading these exams are paid very little to go through and scan through your answers. Usually they spend about a minute per answer, giving you your 0, 1, 2, or 3. If they don't see quotation marks and they have to go digging for it, they might not recognize it in your answer. So always make sure you are putting your quotes in quotation marks. The final part here is the explanation of the racer answer. The summary comes last. Wrap up your constructed response with a brief 1-sentence summary that touches on the main points from your answers above. Don't forget that transition word. It lets the reader know that you are wrapping up. Here we have our transition word overall. You could also put finally or in conclusion. Just make sure you do include that transition word. The character is shown by the author to be an angry and impatient person whose acts seem to be based on temper and immaturity. Just put some kind of opinion in there based on the answers that you've come up with, and you will do fine on this constructive response. I know it seems like there's a lot to remember here, but don't worry. You will hear racers a lot during your LAC 2 class. Our goal is to make sure that you are more than ready for the Keystones by the time that the Keystones get here in May. With hard work and patience with your own efforts, you will see that it will pay off, and you'll do fine on the Keystones. Here are the steps again in case you have any questions. If you do have further questions, make sure to come back and ask your LAC 2 teacher. Have a great day.